But let's jump now on to our second skill, which is all about marking or catching the ball. Let's have a quick look.
Welcome to NAB AFL Auskick. Here are some tips on
Marking!
There are two main ways to catch or mark a football. On your chest, called a chest mark, or in your hands, called an overhead mark.
For chest marking, there are 4 steps. Arms out, palms up, watch the ball, hug the teddy.
Keeping your elbows close together, stretch your arms out straight in front of you to make a number 11. Keep your palms flat, facing the sky. Keep your eyes on the ball the whole time. Watch it all the way into your arms. Catch the ball in your arms and keeping your elbows close together, bring it into your chest. Hug the ball tight, like you're hugging a teddy bear. Don't drop the teddy. So remember, the 4 steps are arms out, palms up, watch the ball, and hug the teddy. And that's how you do a chest mark. Now, let's learn how to do an overhead mark.
For overhead marking, make a W, watch the ball, long arms, and close the W.
Pointing your fingers to the sky, make a W shape with your hands in front of your face and spread your fingers. You're ready to mark the ball. Keep your eyes on the ball the whole time. Watch it all the way into your hands. Try to catch the ball at the highest point by extending your arms high into the sky with your elbows slightly bent. As soon as you see and feel the ball land in your hands, close the W by wrapping your hands around the ball. So the 4 steps are make a W, watch the ball, long arms, and close the W. And that's how you do an overhead mark.
Another great one. Sam, we're going to pass over to you for some more tips, advice, or wisdom on how we can introduce marking to our students.
Yeah, thanks for that. Those videos are great just in terms of nailing down those sort of key points for you to focus on when you're coaching them. So I sort of thought I'd start with a little bit of, and this, I know we're talking about the little leagues, but actually like when we're trying to teach skills, or like we've got to sort of understand our own goal for that as well. And sort of long term, when we talk about expert skill, actually it's the ability to do it in lots of different situations. So no matter what's happening, if you can mark the ball, then that means you're an expert in it. And I know it's sort of, when we're dealing with really young kids, it sounds a bit ridiculous to talk about it like that, but it does shape then how we try and coach as well. Because we sort of think about, when the AFL, when we do a lot of our junior coaching curriculums and things like that, we sort of think about skill as technique and adaptability, and they're both really important. Sometimes we get too caught up in our technique stuff and we forget about the adaptability. So we need to make sure that there's both, which means that, and I love Steph's, chatting about the repetition, you need to do things a lot. There's a saying in skill acquisition that repetition without repetition. And so you need lots and lots of reps to get better at these things, but each rep needs to be maybe a little bit different because that helps to teach us the adaptability and allows, so it's not exactly the same thing over and over again. The ball might move differently. And so the ability to be able to change what you're doing, that's really important. And when you're dealing with young kids, that variability might be really small changes anyway. They might look pretty similar, but it's just giving the kids the opportunity to explore and see when things change, how they might change the way they complete the skill. So for marking, I think one of the key things that we sort of look at is if you don't know where the ball's going to be, it's very hard to mark it. And so the ability to watch the ball and understand and anticipate where it's going to be, which is where you need your hands or your arms to be, is actually a really important skill. And you can kind of progress that from being standing still and someone throwing the ball to you where it's just going to land in your arms, which is a really easy way to learn it, to then being further away or the person's moving and all that sort of stuff allows us to kind of increase the challenge as we go along. So you kind of need to find the challenge point for your kids. And within a group, quite often the challenge point for some kids might be absolutely gun. They might be really good at catching. They've been doing heaps of it since they were little, and others may not have had it at all. So the ability to find the challenge point for the kids is actually really important. Probably the second thing, so watching the ball is really important for, figuring out ways that they can do that. You might, balloons are a really cool one that Steph was talking about before, because balloons float and move so much in the air that kids actually have to move with them to try and get it, but they move really slowly, which allows them to kind of figure out where they need to be, where their arms need to be to then try and catch the ball. You can use ribbons or handkerchiefs or other different bits of equipment. We talk about the change it approach, the E. That sort of stuff, the ribbons or handkerchiefs or anything float in the air. So kids need to be able to figure out to then try and to get their hands to it. Because the second part is getting your hands. You watch the ball, anticipate, then get your hands to where the ball is. And the tips in the video are really good around what you should be doing with your hands. So if you're trying to catch it up here with your W or your arms out. But what we want to do is we want to give kids the opportunity to explore and try different ways of catching it. Find out what works for them as well. One of my favorite activities that I've ever run with Little League when I used to coach the little ones, we used to do a sort of a creative marking activity where they would pair up and they had to come up in their pair with a really creative way to mark the ball. So they could mark it in their t-shirt, or they could mark it behind their back, or they had to come up with lots of really fun ways to do it, and it allowed them to explore different ways of marking the ball and helping to create that sort of well-rounded skill. Some of them were catching it in their legs. I think the best one I ever saw was a handstand into a cartwheel into a mark. So someone who had a gymnastics background. But it's really fun to see the young ones try and figure out different ways that they can do it or catch it between their elbows, because it all teaches the same thing of watching the ball, where is it going to be, and then getting your body or hands to where you need to mark it. So I'd sort of encourage coaches to use lots of different types of balls. Small balls are really good because you've got to get your hands there. Big ones are really awesome because it's a lot easier for the kids to catch them. Soft ones allow the kids to kind of grab them and catch as they come in. They're not as hard and they don't bounce off. So all these different things allow us to change that challenge point, so we can make it a little bit easier or a little bit harder for the kids, depending on where they're at with their marking.
Yeah, great. I love those opportunities in there to embed that exploration concept and make it a bit more fun too, I guess. But, you're talking about watching the ball, and every single one of those variations really focused on that. So some great stuff in there. And then I guess for teachers who are a bit new to AFL, not so confident in teaching some of these skills, what would be the things you'd be looking for, again, that kids typically do wrong? Yeah. I'm thinking of broken fingers with those pointing up fingers. Any tips of what to look for? And yeah. I think critically how we can help correct those.
Yeah, I mean, what you'll find sometimes is that sometimes kids will be scared of the ball. Like it's something coming at them. It's like, oh, this is like a little bit full on. And so if you've got something like that, so generally you can see that because the kids will turn their head away from the ball, so they won't actually watch it because they'll be a bit worried about it coming off. Things like reducing the space, so the speed at which the ball's traveling, using a different type of ball. Like if it's just a soft, squishy one, and you can kind of get quite close to them and show them, hey, if I throw this to you, it's not going to hit you at all. That allows them to kind of start going, okay, I can try and catch it, and then you can sort of progress from there. So that's the first one. Is I'd just be, if they're a little bit worried about it, like the further they are away from where the ball comes from, the more scared they're going to be of it, because it's going to be coming with a little bit of pace. And so reducing distance and reducing speed is always a really good way to make things a little bit easier. Marking, so whether it's by a chest mark or overhead mark, what you'll find is some of them will be really rigid, so they'll be really stiff, and that means the ball bounces off, or they might have really straight arms and their hands are like this, and the ball just bounces off. And so that's where the really squishy balls are really awesome for that, because they'll absorb a little bit, and then the kids can kind of scrunch them, but you don't really have hard hands. You never scrunch like that. It's kind of, and they learn to soften their hands as the ball comes in to their arms. because they'll get a bit of feedback. Like if it's bouncing off, it makes it quite hard. So they do a little bit of soft. And then also, if you've got a good thrower, that does help a little bit as well. I've got a little 1.5-year-old at the moment. We're teaching him a little bit of catching at the moment. And certainly it's on me as the thrower whether he's going to catch it or not. And so you want to give them a little bit of success. You know, we know success builds confidence. And so whatever you can do to dial down the challenge, if that means, hey, I'm literally going to throw it into your arms and you're going to get that feeling of what it's like to catch it, that gives us a really good starting point to then build up these other ones, these other types of skills like catching overhead or catching from further away or catching on the move. So there's sort of some of the key things that I've sort of noticed when we're coaching the young, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. There's things to watch out for as well.
Yeah, and I guess most of us will be teaching, with the one teacher with our whole class of kids. So I guess there's a lesson in there about making sure we're training the kids about how to throw the ball to their partner as well.
Yeah, there's also some of the cool things you can do depending on their coordination, like even just throwing to themselves. So if you've got enough equipment within the class, just getting them to throw it up to themselves so that it's not going to go very high. Some kids will, they'll have a crack at it, but that's all right. But other ones are just throwing it up, and then you can give them some challenges like throw it up and clap and then catch. And so again, you're allowing them to explore ways that they can do that as well. And we found that, even with 5-year-olds, they're actually pretty good at it. Like you often are surprised at how good they can be and how many claps they can get, or they can spin around and do those sort of things as well. So I sort of highly recommend you can dial up the challenge again by, maybe just doing it amongst themselves or getting them to be really close when they throw.
Yeah. And that success breeds success. You could see that a couple of times with the faces on the video that, I caught it. And they feel it once, and I guess they then get the sense of how that should feel.